Hello, everybody, and welcome to another book stream. So, tonight we are on chapter 2 of the Lost Years of Merlin, book 3, The Fires of Merlin. And in the last chapter, it was pretty short. Merlin had made a little psaltery instrument. I think I'm saying that right. Psaltery, Psaltery. So, who knows? For now, it's psaltery. So now we're going to read chapter 2, The Root Chord. Chapter 2, The Root Chord. Done, I announced. It's ready to play. Done, you say? Kiripri's shaggy gray head poked around from behind the trunk of the great rowan. He looked frustrated, as if he couldn't find the one remaining word he needed to complete an epic poem about tree roots. As his dark eyes focused on my little instrument, his expression clouded still more. A fair piece of work, Merlin. His tangled eyebrows drew together. But it's not done until it's played. As I've said someplace or other, for the truth shall be found, not in sight, but in sound. From behind him, on the brow of the knoll, came a hearty laugh. Never mind that your poem referred to a meadowlark instead of a harp. Carefree and I swung our heads toward my mother as she stepped lightly over the grass. Her dark blue robe fluttered in the breeze that smelled so strongly of autumn, while her hair draped her shoulders like a mantle of sunlight. It was her eyes, though, that drew my attention, eyes more blue than sapphires. Watching her approach, the poet straightened his smudged white tunic. Ellen, he grumbled, I should have guessed you'd return just in time to correct me. Her eyes seemed to smile. Somebody has to now and then. Impossible. Carefree did his best to look gruff, but could not hide his own fleeting smile. Besides, it's not the harp the boy has made, it's a psaltery, though a small one, after the Greeks' psalterion. Did no one ever teach you about the Greeks, young lady? Yes, my mother stifled another laugh. You did. Then you have no excuse whatsoever. Here, she said to me, pouring some plump purple berries into the hollow in the roots near my tools. River tank berries, from the rill across the way. I brought a handful for you. With a sidelong glance at Kiripree, she flicked a single berry at him. And one for you, for agreeing to give me a tutorial on Grecian music. The poet grunted. If I have time. I listened, curious to their bantering. Whatever the reason, their conversations often took such turns lately, and this puzzled me, since their words themselves didn't seem to be what mattered. No, their bantering was really about something else, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Watching them, I popped a few berries into my mouth, tasting the zesty flavor. Here they were, talking as if Carefree thought he knew everything, more perhaps than the great spirit Dagda himself. Yet my mother realized, I felt sure, that he had never lost sight of how little he really did know. As much as he had taught me during the past year about the mysteries of magic, he never began one of his tutoring sessions without reminding me of his own limitations. He had even confessed that, while he knew that I must follow a series of intricate steps in making my first instrument, he wasn't at all certain of their meaning. Throughout the process, from choosing the proper instrument to shaping the wood to firing the kiln, he had behaved as such like my fellow student, as my mentor. Suddenly, something nipped the back of my neck. I cried out, brushing away whatever insect had taken me for a meal, if the culprit had already fled. My mother's blue eye gazed down at me. What's wrong? Still rubbing the back of my neck, I rose and stepped free of the burly roots. In the process, I almost tripped over my scabbard and sword that lay in the grass. I don't know, something bit me, I think. She cocked her head questioningly. It's too late for biting flies. The first frost came weeks ago. That reminds me, said Carefree with a wink at her, of an ancient Abyssinian poem about flies. Even as she started to laugh, I felt another sharp nip on my neck. Whirling around, I glimpsed a small red berry bouncing down the grass of the knoll. My eyes narrowed. I found the biting fly. Really? Asked my mother. Where? I spun to face the old rowan. Raising my arm, I pointed at the boughs arching above us. There, virtually invisible among the curtains of green and brown leaves, crouched a figure wearing a suit of woven vines. Rhea, I growled. Why can't you just say hello like other people? The leafy figure stirred, stretching her arms. Because this is way more fun, of course. Seeing my grimace, she added, brothers can be so humorless at times. Then, with the agility of a snake gliding across a branch, she slid down the twisted trunk and bounded over to us. Ellen watched her with amusement. You are every bit a tree girl, you are. Rhea beamed, spying the berries in the hollow. She scooped up most of what remained. A river tang. A bit tart, though. Then, turning to me, she indicated the tiny instrument in my hand. So, when are you going to play for us? When I'm ready. You're lucky I let you climb down that tree on your own power. Surprised, she shook her brown curls. You honestly expect me to believe that you could have lifted me out of that tree by magic? Tempted though I was to say yes, I knew it wasn't true. Not yet, at least. Besides, I could feel the deep pools of Capri's eyes boring into me. No, I admitted, but the time will come, believe me. Oh, sure, and the time will come that the dragon Valdir will finally wake up and swallow us all in a single bite. Of course, that could be 1,000 years from now. Or it could be today. Please, you two. Capri tugged on the sleeve of my tunic. Stop your battle of wits. Rhea shrugged. I never battle with someone who is unarmed. Smirking, she added, unless they boast about magic they can't really use. This was too much. I extended my empty hand toward my staff, resting against the trunk of the rowan. I concentrated my thoughts on its gnarled top, its carved shaft, its fragrant wood that carried so much power. Out through my fingers I sent the command. Come to me. Leap to me. The staff quivered slightly, rubbing against the bark. Then, suddenly, it stood erect on the grass. An instant later it flew through the air, right into my waiting hand. Not bad. Rhea bent her leaf-draped body in a slight bow. You've been practicing. Yes, agreed my mother. You've learned a lot about controlling your power. Capri wagged his shaggy mane. And much less, I'm afraid, about controlling your pride. I glanced at him bashfully as I slid the staff into my belt. But before I could speak, Rhea chimed in. Come now, Merlin. Play us something on that little thing or whatever it is. My mother nodded. Yes, do. Capri allowed himself a grin. Perhaps you could sing with him, Ellen. Sing? No, not now. Why not? He regarded me thoughtfully, his face both anxious and hopeful. If he can, indeed, make the psaltery play, it will be true cause for celebration. For some reason, his expression seemed to darken. No one knows that better than I. Please, urged Rhea, if there's any celebrating to do, there's no better way to do it than with one of your songs. My mother's cheeks flushed. Turning toward the rippling leaves of the rowan, she pondered for a moment. Well, all right. She opened her hands to the three of us. I shall sing. Yes, a joyful song. Her eyes darted to the poet. For the many joys of the past year. Capri brightened. And of the years to come, he added in a whisper. Again, my mother blushed. Just why it didn't concern me, for I, too, shared her joy. Here I stood, with family, with friends, increasingly home on this island, all of which would have seemed utterly impossible just over 1 year ago. I was now 14 years old, living in this forest, a place as peaceful as the autumn leaves I could see drifting downward. I wanted nothing more than to stay in this very place, with these very people, and one day to master the skills of a wizard, of a true mage, like my grandfather. My fingers squeezed the psaltery's frame, if only it would not fail me. I drew a deep breath of the crisp air buffeting the hilltop. I am ready. My mother, hearing the tautness in my voice, brushed her finger against my cheek, the same cheek that, long ago, had been scarred by a fire of my own making. Are you all right, my son? I did my best to force a grin. I'm just imagining how my strumming is going to compare to your singing, that's all. Although I could tell she didn't believe me, her face relaxed slightly. After a moment, she asked, Can you play in the Ionian mode? If you'll just strike the root chord and play for a while, I can fit my song to your melody. I can try. Good! Rhea leaped up to catch hold of the rowan's lowest branch. She swung to and fro, releasing a bell-like laughter as golden leaves rained down on us. I love to hear a harp, even a tiny one like yours. It reminds me of the sound of rain dancing on the summer grass. Well, the summer has passed, I declared. Yet if anything can bring it back, it will be Mother's voice, not my playing. I turned to Kierpri. Is it time, then, for the incantation? Even as the poet cleared his throat, his expression darkened again, this time more deeply, as if a strange, contorted shadow had fallen across his thoughts. First, there is something I must tell you. He hesitated, selecting his words. Since time beyond memory, anything Chiron boy or girl with the promise of deep magic has left home for an apprenticeship similar to yours, with a real wizard or enchantress, preferably, but if none could be found, with a scholar or bard. Like you. What was he leading up to? All this I knew. Yes, my boy, like me. But why are you telling me this? His brow grew as wrinkled as his tunic. Because there's one more thing you should know. Before you play your psaltery, you see, that apprenticeship, the time of mastering the fundamentals of enchantment, before even starting to make a musical instrument, normally takes a long time, longer than the 8 or 9 months it has taken you. My mother cocked her head at him. How long does it usually take? Well, he fumbled, it varies. Different, you see, from one person to the next. How long? She repeated. He observed her glumly. Then, under his breath, he answered, between 5 and 10 years. Like Ellen and Rhea, I started, nearly dropping the psaltery. Even Tuatha, with all his gifts, needed full 4 years to complete his own apprenticeship. To do it all in less than 1 year is, well, remarkable, or you could say, unheard of. He sighed. I've been meaning to tell you this, really, but I wanted to find the proper time and setting. The opportune time, as rare as good rhyme. Ellen shook her head. You have another reason. Sadly, he nodded. You know me too well. He looked at me imploringly as he ran his hand over a root of the cobbler's rowan. You see, Merlin, I haven't wanted to tell you because I haven't been sure whether your speed, your swiftness in mastering whatever lessons I gave you, was due to your own gifts or to my deficiencies as your tutor. Did I forget any steps? Misread any instructions? It's been nagging at me for some time. I've checked all the ancient texts, oh yes, many times, just to make sure that you've truly done everything right. And I truly believe that you have, or I would not have let you get this far. He straightened. Even so, you ought to be warned, because if the psaltery doesn't work, it may be my fault instead of yours. That's right, and as you know, Merlin, a youth gets just one chance at making a magical instrument. Only one. If it should fail to summon high magic, you will never have another. I swallowed. If my training really moved that fast, it's possible that the reason is something else altogether. Something related to how good you might be as a mentor, or I might be as a student. His eyebrows lifted. Maybe I had some help, from someplace neither of us suspected. Just where, I'm not sure. Pensively, I ran my thumb over the handle of my staff. Suddenly, it struck me. My staff, for example. Yes, that's it. Tuatha's magic, you know. I rolled the tapered shaft under my belt. It's been with me from the start, and it's here with me now. Surely, in playing my instrument, it will help again. No, my boy. Kierpri held my gaze. That staff may have helped you in the past, it's true, but it's no use to you now. The text are as clear as autumn air on this. Only the psaltery itself, and whatever skills you may have brought to its making, will determine whether you pass this test. My hand, holding the tiny frame, began to perspire. What will the psaltery do if I fail? Nothing. It will make no music and bring no magic. And if I succeed? Your instrument, he said while stroking his chin, should start to play on its own. Music both strange and powerful. At least that's what's happened in the past. So just as you have felt magic flowing between you and your staff, you should feel it with the psaltery. But this should be a different level of magic, like nothing you have ever known before. I worked my tongue to moisten it. The trouble is, the psaltery hasn't been touched by Tuatha, only by me. Gently, The poet squeezed my shoulder. When a musician, no wizard, just a wandering bard, plays the harp skillfully, is the music in the strings or in the hands that pluck them? Confused, I shook my head. What does that matter? We're talking about magic here. I don't pretend to know the answer, my boy, but I could show you tome after tome of treatise, some by mages of enormous wisdom, pondering that very question. Then someday, if I'm ever a mage myself, I'll give you my answer. Right now, all I want to do is pluck my own strings. My mother looked from me to Carefree and back to me again. Are you sure it's the time? Are you really ready? My song can certainly wait. Yes, agreed Rhea, twisting one of the vines that circled her waist. I'm not so much in the mood for music now. I steadied her. You don't think I can do it, do you? No, she replied calmly. I'm just not sure. I winced. Well, the truth is, I'm not sure myself. But I do know this. If I wait any longer, I may lose the courage to try. I faced Carefree. Now? The poet nodded. Good luck, my boy, and remember, the texts say that if high magic does come, so, too, may come other things, surprising things. And song, added my mother gently. I will sing for you, Merlin, whatever happens, whether or not there is any music in those strings. I lifted the psaltery, even as I lifted my gaze to the boughs of the ancient rowan. Hesitantly, I placed the instrument's narrow end against the middle of my chest. As I cupped my hand around the outer rim, I could feel my heart thumping through the wood. The breeze slackened, the rustling rowan leaves quieted. Even the gray-backed beetle on the toe of my boot ceased crawling. My voice a whisper, I spoke the ancient incantation. May the instrument I hold usher forth a magic bold. May the music that I bring blossom like the soul of spring. May the melody I play deepen through the passing day. May the power that I yield plant anew the wounded field. Expectantly, I turned to Carefree. He stood motionless, but for his roving eyes. Behind him, the lush hills of Druma Wood seemed frozen, as fixed in place as one of the carvings on my staff. No light swept across the branches. No birds fluttered or whistled. Please, I said aloud, to the psaltery, to the rowan, to the very air. That's the only thing I want, to rise as high as I possibly can, to take whatever gifts, whatever powers you can give me, and use them not for myself, but for others, with wisdom, and I hope with love, to plant anew the wounded field. Feeling nothing, my heart began to sink. I waited, hoping. Still nothing, I reluctantly started to lower the psaltery. Then, ever so slightly, I felt something stir. It was not the leaves above me, nor the grasses at my feet, nor even the breeze. It was the smallest string. As I watched, my heart drumming against the wooden rim, the remotest tip of one end of the string began to twirl. Slowly, slowly, it lifted, like the head of a worm edging out of an apple. Higher it rose, pulling more of the string with it. The other end also awoke, curling about its knob. Soon the other strings started to move as well, their ends coiling and their lengths tightening. Tuning itself. The psaltery was tuning itself. In time, the strings fell still. I looked up to see Carefree's growing smile. At his nod, I prepared to pluck the root cord. Wrapping my left hand more firmly around the rim, I curled the fingers of my right. Delicately, I placed them on the strings. Instantly, a wave of warmth flowed into my fingertips, up my arm, and through my whole body. A new strength, part magical and part musical, surged through me. The hairs on the back of my hands lifted and swayed in unison, dancing to a rhythm I could not yet hear. A wind arose, growing stronger by the second, waving the branches of the cobbler's rowan. From the forested hills surrounding us, leaves started drifting upward, first by the dozens, then by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Oak and elm, hawthorn and beech, shimmering with the brilliance of rubies, emeralds, and diamonds. Spinning slowly, they floated toward us, like a vast flock of butterflies returning home. Then came other shapes, swirling around the rowan, dancing along with the leaves. Splinters of light, fragments of rainbow, tufts of shadow. Out of the air itself, shreds of mist wove themselves into more shapes, wispy spirals, serpents, knots, and stars. Still more shapes appeared, from where I could not fathom, made not from light or shadow or even clouds, but from something else, something in between. All of these things encircled the tree, drawn by the music, the magic to come. What, I wondered, would the power of the psaltery bring next? I smiled, knowing that the time to play my instrument had finally arrived. I plucked the strings. Okay, so that, my friends, was chapter 2, and we will read chapter 3 tomorrow. Thank you for your comment, Joshua. I hope you join me tomorrow for chapter 3. And have a wonderful night, everybody.